from a 6-figure salary to 3 days a week in a very, very low wage.
If you know anything about gin, then you will have heard of Anther Distillery. My guest on Remarkable Regional Business today is Derv McGowan, the co-founder of Anther. They're based down in Geelong and have a remarkable story of growth, of challenge, and of overcoming of those challenges, and some really innovative and amazing products that we're going to discuss later in the episode. So without any further ado, let's get into it. Derv, thanks so much for joining me in the studio. This is super cool.
Thanks for having me.
This is an amazing opportunity because I think this is the first podcast where I've actually had props. And so
That's special.
yeah. So for those listening in, you'll just have to imagine or jump on YouTube and have a bit of a look. But what have we brought in? Let's just start with what we've got here.
We've got, we do a couple of different format sizes, but the two big gins there are on the table. We've got Fluorescence, which is a collaboration with the Royal Botanic Gardens in Melbourne.
Epic. We'll hear more about that, yes.
Exciting. And then the other one is another collaboration we did with the Australian Gynecological Cancer Foundation.
Oh, wow.
I know. We love doing collaborations, but that's a particularly
Oh my goodness.
one that we have. Yeah.
That's cool. We'll hear more about that too. Let's start with the basics. Tell me about Anther. What is Anther?
So Anther is a very small family-run business in North Geelong. The name comes from botanicals, the botanical word for a part of the flower, the reproductive part of the flower called the anther that holds the pollen. So it's a little ode to the botanicals that we use. We use a lot of plants in our distilling.
Yeah,
so
wow.
That's what that's for.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's a bit geeky, but we love it.
Yeah, well, I never knew that, so I've learned something already.
And so we're in this beautiful spot in North Geelong in the Federal Woolen Mills. Now, North Geelong is known for heavy industry. You used to have Ford there, Pilkington, and all of those fell away a few years ago now. And what's popped up in their place are little businesses like us. So Geelong used to have one of the biggest distilleries in the Southern Hemisphere.
Did it really?
Fire Distillery. Yeah,
wow.
Which is, you could, if there wasn't so many buildings in the way, you'd be able to see it from our distillery. We could walk there. That's now it's still got the old stills in there. We've still got bits of it, but you can see where the booze would come in, the grain would come in and the booze would go out. It was epic. It had its own train line. So we're not anywhere, we're tiny by comparison, we're like a pinprick, but it sort of feels nice to be continuing that historical position in Geelong. So we're an innovative company. They would have been innovative at the time. And Geelong was known as Pivot City. It was a really innovative town. And so it's really beautiful to have watched that innovation turn into these massive companies coming in like Ford and Pilkington, Alcoa. And then they've gone away. But Geelong's still finding a way to be innovative and interesting and cool. So, we feel very proud to be part of that.
Yeah.
And then also the rejuvenation of North Geelong as well.
Yeah.
So it's exciting times for Geelong.
It's super exciting, and you will be the third Geelongite. What is the name for people living in Geelong?
Like awesome people.
The third business from Geelong. The first one my guest was Andrew Hamilton, and we love Andrew. And so Pivot City and the Federal Woolen Mills, we're really completing some circles of stories here, which is really cool.
So Andrew's brother and Andrew's family, they're our landlord.
Yeah.
And they're the ones who've rejuvenated the Federal Woolen Mills. So this is like was opened in 1915. It's a red brick factory. And they've taken a concrete desert and beautified it. It is so beautiful. The plants, they've planted out the whole area. It's gorgeous. So they've done a very respectful renovation, obviously. They're a heritage listed building. And then they've just built on that.
Taken it next level, right?
Yeah, something else.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about Pivot City, but also Andrew's newest venture, which is Yucca, which is really, really cool. But go Geelong. I love Geelong. I feel like Geelong has a bit of a sister city kind of vibe to Bendigo because Bendigo and, not to get too deep, Bendigo and Ballarat, we're kind of like rivals because we both start with B. And everyone gets them confused. Oh, you did?
Ballarat girl here.
So you know. But Geelong, no, we love Geelong.
Geelong's okay.
Yeah, totally. So tell me, let's go a little bit through the product range. Yeah. So Anther is a gin distillery. Yep. What kind of gins do you make?
We make all sorts of gins. So Sebastian, my husband, and I co-founded it, and we love cocktails, like big, bold cocktails. So my favourite cocktails are Negronis, and Negronis and martinis. I've always vied for my love, but now I'm in my martini phase. So I don't know. I hit 50 and now I like martinis. I don't know what's going on. But we wanted gins that stood up well in cocktails. So our first gin, which is the Australian Dry, is my go-to for Negronis and martinis because it is a huge gin, and you can taste the gin through the other big elements in these cocktails, like the vermouths and Campari, or what we use Australian bitters. And so we wanted our gin to be a balanced gin in a cocktail. And also to drink well as a gin and tonic, and it does. It lightens up really weirdly.
Wow.
We were really surprised at how different the spirit was. And that was our first gin, so obviously it's very close to our hearts. But we also didn't know what we were doing when we made it. So we actually had to do a lot of R&D to get, because we were saying, we know this tastes nice in a cocktail, and you distill it and it was vile. Like bergamot I love bergamot, and I'm still a little scarred. We did a distillation with that, and it absolutely wrecked our distillation because we didn't treat the bergamot peel correctly.
Oh no!
So I've never gone back.
Oh no!
It was such a huge mistake, but that's how we learned. We learned by making lots of mistakes because we knew the theory of distillation. Yeah. But when we started, there was no one to teach you how to do it, so you had to muddle through.
Wow. So let's dive into that a little bit. Let's go the origin story of Anther. When did you start Anther?
So we started in 2016. Coincidentally, it was the year that I finished my PhD and decided that that's not for me anymore. So I spent all through university, followed my nose through to finishing a PhD, and then got to the end of it and went, no, I don't want to do this anymore.
What was the PhD in?
It was molecular microbiology, so genetics and in bacteria, pathogenic bacteria, so things that cause disease. Yeah.
Whoa! And you got all the way to the end, and good on you for finishing.
It was mainly stubbornness, I think.
Okay.
It was a huge. I've taken so much from that and applied it to the business. And one of the things that you need in business to be able to pick yourself up and keep going when things are bad. And a PhD teaches you that multiple times every day.
Perfect. Perfect training ground.
So that was what I did. And then Seb was working for a big liquor company, and he was state manager. And he'd always worked in bars and with flavours and brands. And he was on a great salary. I was looking to, on paper, we were great. We were doing very well, and neither of us were happy. He wasn't getting to deal with people anymore. He wasn't getting to deal with flavour, and he missed that.
Yeah.
And I think that was a little bit of an element for me too. I was missing people. I went out and did some consulting work for food waste recycling, which was absolutely fabulous.
Wow.
Totally different way of communicating. I had to learn how to speak science in English, which took me a while because, it's a whole nother language.
I bet.
So we were doing this sort of jockeying, looking around for something, and then a friend of a friend opened a place called The Craft & Co. in Smith Street in Collingwood. So that was Paul Baggio and Cam Smith, who runs the Triple R Eat It program, which has been going for 27 years now, I think.
Wow.
But it's an amazing program.
Yeah.
So he knew Paul, and Paul needed a distiller, and he said, maybe you should meet my friend Seb, who knows loads about booze, and they met, and Seb came home and told me about the opportunity, and he went from a 6-figure salary to 3 days a week in a very, very low wage. So we took this huge change of life. So we had a child, we had a mortgage, and we had great prospects. And we're like, we'll pop those in the bin and we'll start again.
Wow.
So I was still doing consulting work and teaching at university.
Yeah.
Still, and I'd submitted the PhD, so that was all done. And I was looking for jobs. Every time I applied for a job, I was not enjoying myself. So eventually I realised that was not really for me. And then Seb was like, I think we should start a brand. And I'm like, well, I'll write a business plan. I didn't know how to do that. I just Googled it. And he said, you need to come and look at the still. And I'm like, I'm not coming near that place until I see that this business plan's going to work. So I was at home ferreting about doing that. And anyway, you convinced me one day to come in. And I saw the car still in the window of Craft & Co. And the business plan went out the window because I fell in love with the still. Like I literally fell in love with the still.
Wow.
And so that was it. We just... So we only had 3 days of work a week. He only had 3 days of work a week.
Yeah.
We had negotiated some time on the still and time there to develop our own gin. I had to teach Sebastian the scientific method, which took a while. So we had some creative differences in the beginning, but eventually he understood. So what happens when you make a gin is you make a change and then you have to wait 2 weeks to see or at least a week to see if it's any good. So when you distill it, it's really volatile and you can't
settle.
see the character of the gin. Time needs to settle, time to integrate so that those subtler flavours can come out. So he was a cocktail bartender. So he's like, I know how to change this, so I'm going to change. Like if he's got a drink on the bar, he says it needs a little bit more sugar, a little bit more bitter, a little bit more citrus, whatever. But you can't do that because if you change 3 things, you don't know which of the 3 hasn't or has worked. So 2 weeks later, you've got an answer, but you don't know which answer you've got.
Not very scientific.
No, so doing our first gin took us 10 months to develop the. Wow. Yeah, so it was a long time because we didn't. There was no rule book even for our gin recipe. We actually went back to a gazette in the 1800s to find a gin recipe that we could start with.
No way.
Nobody's going to give you their gin recipe. So 4 Pillars were extremely helpful. They helped us with lots of stuff. We were not going to ask them, could we also have your gin recipe?
Yeah, we'll have your help and your IP.
Yeah. And they were very helpful to the whole industry. They've been wonderful and set the tone of a very collaborative industry.
Nice.
There's only certain things that you can ask for. But we found this, our first one was from the 1800s.
So walk me through that process. What did you actually do to develop that first gin? Like how does one go from a blank slate to and a Gazette article from the 1800s to create your first gin?
Well, the first thing we had to do was translate, I think it was 3 different measurement types. So it was in... empirical. It was almost like biblical. So they had like one would be in
cubits.
It was like 1 cubit of. But it was. I remember there was imperial measurements, and then there was other older measurements that we had to find ways of. So we had to translate that first.
Wow.
So we made that first gin, and it was all right. It was good. It actually it distilled well, and then we started messing with it, and it was with the messing that you put, like we used tarragon in our Australian dry. Fresh tarragon is appalling in a distillation because it's really bitter. There's really bitter oils in it. However, if you dry it, the oils evaporate and you get this really beautiful, slightly anise, sort of herbaceous, gorgeous flavour.
Wow.
So we had to learn that by making the mistake of distilling it first. A wet product, like an undry product, fresh product.
So you're looking at a gin lover that knows nothing about distilling. Tell me, how does one distill a gin?
You have to get the recipe right first. So you spend 10 months working that out. It's incredibly simple. It's a simple process. Yeah. Because you're basically taking a pot and you're putting botanicals in it, and the pot is shaped in a way so that it will collect vapor for you. You heat the pot up, and the ethanol is amazing. So you're putting it, booze is ethanol. So the ethanol is incredible at taking flavour and carrying flavour over. So if you get your ratios right in your recipe, that ethanol will do all the work for you. There are some skills levels in making what's called your heads and tails cuts, because you need to learn what's good when to cut. So in distilling, you've got heads, hearts, and tails. The heads are really like volatile and bright. If you think of like nail polish, that's sort of like really astringent, unpleasant, bright element. But that will slowly move into sweetness and softness. And so that's where you do your cut. And then you start your hearts. And you run your hearts through. And as the hearts run through, the flavours become, by turns, you'll get different types of citrus coming through. But you'll start off maybe getting the equivalent of like a lemon isopole. So really bright, beautiful sweetness. And towards the end or middle, you might get dark orange oil. So the citrus that you're getting at the start, I don't have orange in, but you'll get that citrus flavour maybe later in a distillation.
Wow.
And then you head towards the tails, and the tails carries these stunning flavours. Like we'd use a lot of dark spices like cinnamon-like ones, cassia, and clove and ginger, nutmeg, and they all sort of start to come out in the tails. So you need to then feather that, because the flavour that comes out in the tails is bitter. So you want to feather the flavour of the nose and the mouth, but you don't want the bitterness. So you've got to really work and think about that tails cut.
Okay, so heads, hearts, and tails, are they different ingredients or a part of the process in terms
It's
of time?
the whole distillation. So when you do your distillation, so it's you do your distillation for your gin. That's the whole
process.
Cut into 3 parts.
Okay. And is there different temperatures or different factors involved? What makes it the head? How do you know when you're at the heart and when you're at the tail?
So the head comes out first.
Yeah.
Heart comes out second. Tails come out third.
Makes
and
sense.
It's all about flavour and taste and nose. Yeah.
Wow.
And the temperature is extremely important because it controls the flavours that come through. So if you've got a lower temperature on your still, more water will come through because the still will get higher in temperature. And I'm really simplifying this, but
thank you.
It's controlled after the still. So just for all of my distilling geeks out there, I know that. But your temperature controls how much vapour, the flavours in the vapour that come through. So you can push back flavour, those bitter flavours, by decreasing the temperature of your still. So the hotter your still is, the more water will carry through into your vapour, and then you're collecting bitter flavours. You can collect more bitter flavours. The cooler your still is, it actually lowers the temperature, so therefore you're not getting as many of those bitter flavours through. So you can control by temperature.
Oh, wow.
And then the other way you can control is by copper contact or by what's called reflux. So it's how much basically the ethanol bounces around. So the ethanol will come up, it'll condense, and then drop back in. And it'll come up and condense and drop back in. And every time it does that, the more it does that, the more flavour it loses. So you can control how much flavour goes in and out of your distillate that way.
Wow.
And so we've got plates we can open and close in our still. So if we want lots of flavour through or lots of water flavours through, we'll have much less reflux, so much less bouncing, or it'll just fly through.
Right.
Still.
Wow, complex.
Yeah.
So tell me, ingredients in all gins, ethanol, botanicals, anything else?
Has to have juniper.
Juniper.
To be called a gin. Yeah.
Of course. Wow, So there's a fair bit involved, and I can imagine the process of, you said the first one, 10 months of playing around. What was that process like for you, like your first gin?
Delicious. It was amazing because we're discovering all these amazing botanicals. And it was a sensory delight to begin this journey.
Yeah.
And we, every time you open a packet, you stick your nose in it and taste it. And sometimes your tasting was a bad idea.
Yeah.
We've got a thing called Grains of Paradise, which was in Bombay Sapphire. And we're like, that's just marketing, right? We don't believe that that's any good. So we got some to see. And it's one of my favourite botanicals, but it's really expensive. It's $400 a kilo.
Oh, my goodness.
But it's amazing. It's got pepper. It's got floral notes. It's just got this extraordinary journey of flavour when you taste it.
Wow.
and it's West African, and it's involved in all sorts of cultural elements in West African cultures. So it's a really cool botanical. And so you get to go on those journeys as well. You get to learn about the significance of botanicals, and like juniper has been used since megalithic times.
Wow.
In Europe and North America as a cleansing element. So
really,
we would burn juniper wood to cleanse the cattle after being wintered indoors.
Wow.
They drive them in the early spring. They drive them through this smoke. They'd also use juniper wood to cleanse the barns as well afterwards. So
oh wow,
there's really cool like historical elements in all of our botanicals that we use. That once you start tapping that, you're like, this is a cool, very cool. Drink.
Yeah, very cool. Hey, that's so true, because there's most plants have some sort of quality that is useful to humans in some way.
Yes.
And so harnessing, those different botanicals and realizing what is the story behind them and like what's its unique superpower is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Wow. And so you're 10 months in and you've developed your first gin.
Yeah.
Like, what are you thinking then? Like, what now?
We weren't thinking, but weirdly, so Sebastian and I did a little possible campaign. So we did a little crowdfunding to start the brand, and we raised a huge amount of $17,000, which was enormous for us at the time. But now I'm looking at it going, that was not enough. But it was a really beautiful way of introducing ourselves as on this new journey to our friends and family, and then their friends and family, because that's sort of really what that possible like capital raise is. So as part of that, and as a gift to our supporters, we committed to doing our first scale distillation with our supporters.
Oh.
So
what did that look like?
It was really odd, because Sebastian and I never spoke about it. It was just, we just knew that that would happen. It was just, and someone said, oh, how did you come to this? And Seb and I, we sort of just did. Like, it was a bizarre moment. But we were our synergy was great at the time as well. Because we were having this beautiful sort of exploratory thing. It was extraordinary. And it went, thankfully, it wasn't the first time we'd ever distilled, because we'd been doing other work. But it was the first time we distilled our gin at scale. And it went really well.
Wow.
Yeah, the first distillation was excellent.
Wow.
We were working with that beautiful Carl still, which I don't know we did actually get things wrong on that, but it was hard to get things wrong on that still. It was a very gentle way to be brought into distilling, so we were lucky in that sense.
Nice. What was some of the wins and the experiences in that early distillation? Like, how much did it create? Like, how much product did you have at the end? And
not much. So we had about 200 bottles per distillation.
Okay.
So it was a small still.
Yeah.
And probably that helped, because you don't want to be dealing with a 600-litre still. But the thing that I found astounding at the time was that we had no training. We had no knowledge. And the guys at Craft & Co. let us loose on a $150,000 piece of equipment.
Wow.
Because there was nobody else.
Yeah.
Like, we weren't going to go in and wreck it, because we'd had some experience, and I'd had some scientific experience. But that, to me, I would never let anyone come in with no experience and work my still, because I'd be terrified that they would hurt themselves. But that was no one quite understood any of that back then. So it was a bit of the Wild West for us at the time, but we didn't even know we were doing it.
Wow.
But yeah, we had some great wins. We had, like I said earlier, the bergamot event. So we did a scale distillation with bergamot, and we're like, okay, it'll be fine. We'll read it. It was terrible. Like, it was like dishwashing liquid.
Oh,
we
boy.
distilled dishwashing liquid. and I was Seb and I, like, how did we do this? This is appalling. And we distilled it again to get the bergamot out. It was still in there. And then we distilled it again, and it still was in there, but it was in there enough that we were able to use it in a limoncello, and it worked amazingly in a limoncello.
Oh, wow.
Because we didn't want to throw it away.
No.
It's precious.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the other thing. You can take a mistake and fix a mistake and then find another way. We had another amazing mistake where someone gave us the wrong botanicals, and we'd distilled in, was it pepperberry or something? So we're really early on in our process, and we made this gin which was amazing, really savoury and a little bit floral and gorgeous, but it wasn't balanced. You couldn't put it into market. But we were then able to use that in a liqueur, which actually worked really well in the liqueur. So it's these, you can take your mistakes and make something magical out of the mistake, which I think is fun to do too.
Very fun. Tell me, what was the industry like at the time, like the distilling industry? Tell me, what did you enter in 2016?
It was very optimistic and excited. There's a lot of people like us who were, a lot of our stories in our industry is, I didn't like my job anymore, so I started distilling. So we were in the middle of a gin boom. So we would make gin and it would sell out. It was effortless.
Wow.
Yeah. You didn't need to do marketing because people were looking and people had money to buy. Yeah. So they weren't afraid to explore new things.
Yeah, wow.
So it was, I'm like, this is so easy. And so we started in this extremely amazing place and with no barriers really.
Wow.
It was beautiful, and everyone was very collaborative and helpful. And we actually, even though it's quite tough now, we're still very collaborative and helpful with one another because we all started out together. Yeah.
And roughly how many other distilleries were around in 2016?
I think there was maybe 9 or 10.
Oh wow! Yeah. So not a whole heap.
No, and Four Pillars was already there. I think there was King Island. Tasmania had a couple of gin, and this is gin distilleries.
Yeah,
so,
there
wasn't many at all.
Wow.
I remember doing a category tasting, and we could fit them all on a table.
Compare that to these days. Yeah. How many are there now?
There's 170 in Victoria alone. There's over 600 nationally, and it's going up.
What?
Yeah.
You started when there was 9 or 10, and now there's... Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow. So the landscape's, safe to say the landscape's changed a fair bit over the last almost 10 years.
Yeah, dramatically.
Dramatically. Yeah. So after you did that first distillation, take me through your business journey then. Like you sold all of those. Was it like the Possible campaign? Was it a... you commit some funds and you get some gin?
Yeah, so we did. You could buy a bottle or 2 bottles, and, or a T-shirt and a bottle, or So we did all those sorts of little things. And then,
so that kick-started you, right? Yeah. Like, what happened after then?
Well, we used that to sort of buy our first bottles, get our brand sorted. We're very fortunate in the people we know. Our graphic designer is Tam Connor, who is an old school friend, and she does exquisite work and is someone who you can go to and go, brain bubble here, and you talk to her once and she comes back with something that's almost exactly what you asked for.
Oh,
like she's extraordinary.
Yeah. Wow. For anyone listening that doesn't know how extraordinary that is, that's quite a skill. Like to be able to distill an idea, excuse the pun, and from a design perspective and produce something marvelous from fragments of an idea is quite amazing. I understand why you would want to hang on to her.
Yeah, she's been with us since the start.
Wow.
Yeah, and she's amazing, and we're just really lucky we have her. So we did all that work with Tam. So we were learning about that. We were learning about IP. It was a massive learning curve, but we were so excited. Yeah. We were just into everything. And then we engaged a distributor, a small distributor, and that was really exciting and cool. We were being picked up by bars because they were all interested in this new category that was emerging and really into trying to understand how we can use Australian Indigenous botanicals in our gins. And, of course, there was quite a few gins that went out. Fortunately, we didn't have this, but that were maybe like too lemon myrtle-y. Lemon myrtle really will give your gin a beating if you put in too much.
I love lemon myrtle, but I can imagine it
Yeah.
could dominate.
So but we were both, so Seb was still working for Craft & Co. and he was the distiller there, and that was a little brand incubator. So he was able to, and we were both sort of workshop all of this stuff, but he was able to understand categories of flavour. And, you know, both of us in our backstory, we loved going out to bars and we loved going out to restaurants. We had a very well developed palates and very empty pockets.
Yep. I can imagine.
Yeah. So we were ahead of the curve there in the sense that we had spent a long time eating amazing and drinking amazing food and drinks. So he was doing that and I was still teaching. So it was sort of like almost like a hobby.
Yeah.
And so on the weekends we'd do markets or we'd do tastings in bottle shops, and it was just this really lovely, relaxed sort of thing. And everyone wanted to be your friend when you turned up at school. It's like, oh, what's your job? And you're like, oh, I've got my own business. Like, oh, what do you do? And I make gin. And they're like, you make what? So yeah, it was just a lovely time, and people were really optimistic and happy in their work.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was wonderful.
Yeah. Wow. And so what were the first few years like as you're operating Anther on the side of a couple of part-time jobs? When was the tipping point of when you thought, hey, let's ramp this thing up?
Well, we were fortunate in the sense that we didn't, because we were working through Craft & Co. and we had a particularly good situation there, we were able to test out our business in a fairly risk-free way, even though we had literally put ourselves in a risky position because we walked away from two beautiful careers. But we were sort of half in and half out. So I still had my toe in at university. So if it all went to hell, I was able to actually slip stream back in there. But it was growing to a point where it stopped being fun and started being like late nights and work. And so there's that statistic, I think it's 80% of small businesses fail because people will be part-time in their small business and keep their day job and they can't give enough attention, so the business actually starts to fail. So we knew about that statistic, and so I was the one who took the plunge and went in full-time into the business. So I was running the business and distilling and packaging. So we had a daughter, remember, so I would drop my daughter off at school. We'd have our distillate diluted at Craft & Co. I'd come in and set up, and I'd bottle, label and wax seal, which was very labour intensive, everything before 2 p.m, when I needed to leave, and I was very quick. So we both did every part of the business, but I ended up running the business side of things.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because of the way that sort of fell out.
Yeah. What sort of volumes were you doing at that time?
Not huge volumes. So we'd do a distillation and we'd sell it. We were selling it to Japan as well at the time. And we still have a little bit of stuff going to Japan, but not in any major way. So I couldn't actually tell you what volumes we were doing. Maybe 300 or 400 bottles a month at the time, which was quite good. Yeah. And we were just, keeping up when I was working as well. So it was much better when I wasn't working. Yeah.
So what about financially? Like when you decided to jump in, like was it what's 300 bottles a month worth in terms of revenues to the business, and were you breaking even at that point?
I would say no, we weren't, and I would sometimes go without pay, which is that's every entrepreneur's journey.
Common story.
It's just what happens. We had savings, so we were sort of dipping into those a little bit. Yeah. But it was really clear that if you gave attention to the business gave you attention and money back.
Yeah, great.
So we had to spend time giving the business its attention, and we love it. Like I did an event last night with ABV Victoria, the little bottle shop
Yeah.
just in Mitchell Street as well.
Yeah.
And I always love talking to people about the brand and talking about journeys and stories, and really enjoy that. So we were really loving that. And so that worked really well. Like, we had a cocktail competition, which got great attendance, and made
Wow.
gin with the winners. So that was at that time. So it was just all amazing. But yeah, you still had to work hard, but it didn't really feel like work at the time.
Yeah.
Which was lovely. And everyone was receptive. So everyone wanted to have your spirit in their bar. So it was, like I said, really easy.
Boom time.
It was boom time.
I'm getting the impression that it hasn't continued being that easy, and like, I've got a bit of inside knowledge on and awareness of the state of the industry these days and over the past little while. But why don't you take me a little bit through what happened next in your growth story of Anther after you went full time? You were doing everything. I assume you were doing marketing, business development, sales, web design. What did that actually look like, and how did you grow it?
So it looked appalling. Like, honestly, but because we were a craft distillery, people were like, of course it looks appalling. You guys are like a husband and wife thing. You've got a child. You're like me.
Yeah, yeah.
I know what I wouldn't be able to do half of what you can do. So people were so lovely and engaged, because partly we would muck things up. Like, our daughter would help us with our labelling, and I would send out, sometimes there would be a sideways label on a bottle. And I'd have a bottle shop ring me and say, your label is sideways. And I went to pick the bottle up, and I said, yeah, I'm so sorry. I said, I'll come in and I'll swap that bottle out for you. I said, I'll come in and I went in and I said, this was my daughter. She's 5 years old, and she put this label on, and it just got through through QA.
Yeah.
Which was probably her.
Yeah,
And they're like, no, we don't want to give it back. Like, they wanted to sell it, but they did give it back. But they said, if you told us, we wouldn't have.
Wow.
But just because that was a really cute story they could have told to a customer, which
Yeah.
So we actually, the next stage for us was, we employed somebody to help us, and we employed another parent at the school, and she was amazing and didn't know anything about anything we were doing. So we were all learning together.
Oh, wow.
And so she'd ring me in to go, I've encountered this problem. And I'm like, And she's like, what do I do? And I'm like, Google it. I don't know. I'm so sorry. And so she developed with us. And so that was a really beautiful collaborative relationship as well. And she stayed with us for years and years and years, and then went off to become a teacher. So we employed, and then that was amazing having an employee, but it really didn't feel for us like an employee, more of a friendship than that, which was surprisingly a good setup for us in the state we were in.
Yeah.
And then we sort of were doing bigger events like Junipaloozas, and we're selling more. We got into Dan Murphy's because we won a trophy in 2018 for our Australian Dry. So
Wow.
it was best gin in category across the country.
Wow.
Which we were really proud about
getting.
And I was shocked. Like, I literally ran on the spot because someone said, like, when we were announced, we were like, we're gold medal. I'm like, and we're up for a trophy. That was me done. I'm like, I'm happy. And then we got the trophy, and I actually couldn't move because I was so shocked. Someone had to actually give me a little push to get to go and accept the trophy.
Who puts on those awards? And tell me a little bit about what the having a trophy, getting a trophy means. Like, how many other distilleries you're up against, and all that kind of thing.
Well, you're up against everyone. So 2018, I think there was 400 entrants.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah, and that's across all categories. So I don't know what the portion of gin was, but there was a lot of gin in that year.
Yeah.
The competition is called the Australian Distilled Spirits Awards, and it's run by what was then called the Agricultural Society of Victoria. So the guys who run the Melbourne show.
Wow.
So they're the guys, and so they're now called Melbourne Royal. So yeah, we were in very good company, and that's why we were so shocked, because we'd only been making gin for 2 years.
Wow.
How are we able to take a trophy out here? Like, it just blew our minds.
Wow.
And so, yeah, that was amazing. And then the following year, I won a trophy for a micro batch that I did, which was a barrel-aged gin, and we were up against a significant Tasmanian whiskey.
Ooh.
So I'm like, again, I'm not going to win a trophy against those guys. They're phenomenal. And they had a single barrel that they entered, and we were both up for the trophy. And they announced me, and again, what is going on? That was insane. So that was
wow.
Yeah, blew my mind. So we were up against every micro batch in the country. So any category could have been in that one, and we were up against a whiskey. So
oh boy,
mind blowing. So that was So all of those things like those trophy wins. Then that Dan Murphy's goes, oh, would you like to come into my store? And we said, oh,
yes, please, Uncle Dan.
So that was amazing. So that does not happen anymore at all.
Really?
So like I'm saying, like this was like someone had laid out a red carpet and sprinkled rose petals on it for us. It was amazing.
Wow,
times.
That's quite a good story from a growth perspective, a business growth. It seems like it felt like it was all laid out before you.
Yeah, it was extraordinary. Yeah.
Wow. And so getting Dan Murphy's on board, what did that do for business?
It built business. It was a big initial bump for us.
Yep.
But maintenance of that in store was hard.
Yeah.
Because we were literally 3 people, and Dan's is used to working with multinationals.
Wow. So tell me, what were the complexities? What made that hard?
We didn't have the marketing budget. We didn't have any marketing budget.
Yeah.
So the way we got around it was we went in, did in-store tastings, and we were nice to the staff. We didn't know we were just nice, like we're just having a chat, being nice to people, like treating them like people.
Yes.
And that actually made an amazing difference. So we were having people who were, say they wanted to, like much later on, wanting to work with us, and they'd go into like the Richmond store in Melbourne and say, can you recommend us a gin? And they would recommend Anther because our staff were kind.
Wow.
And we're not going, right, strategize and let's be kind to everyone so they buy our gin. We was just being ourselves. And just the people that we had around us were lovely people. And so people are going, how are you doing this? And we're like, we're just originally didn't actually know what was happening. But yeah, we realised it was just because we were not mean or not dismissive of the staff.
Oh, wow. And when you lay it out like that, like, of course that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Those people, the staff at Dan's, they're always going to be asked for recommendations. Yeah. They're almost your salespeople, right? Yeah. Like they're a massive sales channel for you. Not just being on the shelf isn't like, that's good.
Yes.
But being in the mind and the heart of the people recommending the product was an amazing boost. And that's cool.
The other thing we did was we looked at it. We did a spreadsheet, and it was like green, orange, red. So who sells the most, and down to the least in those 3 categories, and then who treats us well when we go in store. So that was the other thing, because we couldn't go and see every store.
Yeah.
So if we went into a store, or one of my staff went into a store, and they were treated poorly, we didn't go back.
Huh.
Because I don't want my brand associated with that.
Yeah.
So, and that wasn't just Dan's, that was any bottle shop that we would be in. And that served us really well as well.
Hey, so you kind of made that into a bit of a strategy of like, how are we going to harness this?
Yeah, if you're going to treat my staff well, my staff can't be kind to you, because that's then allowing you have to be able to defend yourself, or put a boundary down there, and then that's automatically an issue.
Yeah, wow.
So we were just like, we knew that we had limited resources, so we needed to focus, and that's what we did.
So for those who aren't across the requirements of what it takes for a brand or a product to be in a store like Dan Murphy's or anywhere else, Aldi, Costco, supermarket, what are some of the requirements and what does it take to maintain that shelf space?
You need good margin. you need to be selling well in store and discounting. So I've changed. I'll talk about that, how we've changed our strategies in later on. But initially, the discounting wasn't too much of a problem. They were just wanting to have this new category on shelf.
Yep.
So they were actually quite good and amazing to work with. And it was basically you just roll your gin out and then you do your tastings, and it was actually quite a simple process.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And the discounting obviously is for promotions and discounts. That helps products generally move in a big aggregated store like Dan Murphy's, right?
Yeah.
But you didn't have to do too much of that.
No, we didn't, but we would do, like, leading up to Christmas, we'd say put our cherry gin on a special, or we'd rotate 3 gins through that we would have on special during the year. And the discounts weren't significant discounts for us, but that was enough to move through. And then that would, we did a couple of sort of EDM sort of promotions, and that worked really well as well. So we were just dabbling, but obviously we couldn't get into a magazine for $10,000 because we just didn't have that money sloshing about.
Yeah.
So we just tried to do as much as we could with the resources that we had. Yeah.
Love it. What next? What happened after that?
Well, we sort of had outgrown Craft & Co. We moved to Brogan's Way, which was a 600-litre Carl, which is a beautiful still, another beautiful still. And then we started looking for a place to call home. So we were living in Melbourne, and an opportunity came up in Geelong that fell over. That didn't happen because it was too far away for us, of opening a distillery down there. But the first thing I went to do, because we'd done a little bit of like research with councils. So some councils are really receptive and other councils are not. The planners get excited, but then the planners tell you some of the constituents here are going to complain, so you'll have to go to VCAT, and therefore you'll... Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's to do with just distilleries?
Well, yeah.
Alcohol businesses?
Yeah, well, there's some councils where it doesn't matter what the planning is, it'll get complaints. Every single application has to go to VCAT. And there's one particular council which is in a beautiful area, and it's got a Dan Murphy's and a Coles and a Woolies and no boutique things there, because the people that can afford to go to that next step are the big businesses.
Oh, man. Oh, that's painful to even think about.
Yeah. So anyway, the first thing I did when we went to Geelong was go to the council.
Yeah.
And like, talk me through. They were super
Which one
excited.
are you?
Yeah. So which category do you fall into? So I brought our gin in.
Yeah.
They were super excited.
Yeah.
They're like, the only thing you need to worry about is parking. So you need to have enough parking if you want to have a cellar door.
Okay.
And they said, and by the way, here's our 2 major developers in Geelong. And so we met Cam Hamilton that day. They were very excited. The planners were very excited.
Wow.
And then Cam, he had his offices out at Federal Woolen Mills.
Yeah.
And he said, I've got a building, but it's already leased, but I really want to show it to you. And he showed us the boiler house for the site. So this building has got a 42-metre chimney on the back of it. So this is where all the energy and heat for the Federal Woolen Mill was made.
Whoa.
In this site. So electricity was made on site in the boiler house. So this boiler house is huge. Like, when you think about it, it's basically giant radiators. Wow. But it's epic. So it was coal-fed and then moved to gas, and then was decommissioned and removed over time. And wasn't just me, fell in love with this room, this building, and it was just a shell.
Huh.
And he said, it's leased, I can't give it to you, but this is sort of what we've got. So he sent us around to a few others, which wouldn't have worked because we needed truck access and there wasn't enough parking, and we sort of knew what we needed. So 6 months went by, we were looking for a 42-metre chimney on a boiler house, basically, and that was 100 years old.
We want another one of that.
Our hearts were there.
Yeah.
And he emailed us, and the lease had fallen through, and we were able to move in. And we're, again, very small business, it was a very large building.
Yeah.
And we said, look, we can't take the whole piece, but we'll take the back.
Yeah.
And he said, well, I might put a restaurant in the front. And so
Wow.
we sort of workshopped all that out
Yeah.
together, and we've got a door between the restaurant and us, so people in the restaurant can see us. And our still is in the window, so
Oh,
people
wow.
can see us distilling through the window.
Perfect.
And that restaurant's called 1915, which is the year that the Federal Woolen Mills was opened.
Wow. Gee, what a wonderful little collaboration. Well, not a collaboration, but like a match for neighbours, right?
Extraordinary.
Yeah.
And so the really awkward thing was for us,
Yes.
this was a 2018 sort of thing. We've moved down to Geelong, and we're like, this is amazing, and we're planning. It takes a year and a half to do the planning. So we're like, great, got all our planning done, ready to build in 2020.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Oh, no. So, yeah, we had to really decide whether or not we wanted to continue.
Wow.
And, like, so we still had a shell, but we had all our planning. Everything was ready to go. We were ready to press go. We lost 80% of our business overnight for COVID.
80%.
Yeah, because we were a small business in bars and restaurants. Bars and restaurants shut. And we didn't have a really great online sort of shop
Oh,
set
wow.
up, because we were not good with websites. So that's one of the areas we're doing not so well in.
Yeah.
A lot of our sales came through our mailing list, so we had a very engaged audience, so that was great.
Yeah.
But we were like, this was a very stark moment for us in our business to say, you're not diverse enough.
Wow.
You've got all your eggs in your very happy little basket, naive business basket over here.
Yeah.
Because everyone laid all the carpets for you. Everything was, it was. Yeah.
Everything happened.
Yeah, and
then everything stopped happening.
So we went from happily telling people about our gin to supporting our industry. So we had this ridiculous cocktail competition. It's called the Anther Stay Connected Cocktail Competition. And we gave away a bottle of gin every week that we were in lockdown in COVID. So it was a lot of gin went out. But it wasn't the most technical. It was the most entertaining video and you had to make make cocktails from stuff in your cupboard. Whatever was in your cupboard. Didn't have to be an Anther product.
Yeah.
It just had to be in your cupboard. And so we had the most hilarious things. There was one young woman in Tasmania. She's my favourite. She still sticks in my head. She was in her dressing gown and she made a tequila sunrise with gin. And she got a plastic, like she just literally slopped in whatever gin it was. I don't think she even measured it. She had and she was just really funny. She was so funny.
Yeah.
She got her carton of concentrated orange juice from the supermarket. It wasn't one of those chilled ones. It was one from the long life. And she poured it, and it she accidentally over-poured it and spilled it all over the place. I was a mess. And then she put this little bit of grenadine, and I think it was actually just raspberry cordial that she had in her cupboard, in as the sunrise. And then she just said, cheers, and then drank it. And everyone was, it was so funny. But it was just a way of, and we had one cocktail bartender who every week went in, every single week, and won multiple bottles of gin for us.
So this was weekly or monthly?
Weekly.
Weekly cocktail competition.
Yeah.
Run online.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And how did you come up with that idea?
I don't know, because I had 4 staff, including Seb and myself. We had 4 staff. We just employed a distiller. Yeah. We had Amy, who was still with us, and Seb and myself, and we just were like, we just sit on these calls and just go, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
Our beautiful industry is in crisis. We've got no way to sell gin to. We can't say, oh, I know your doors are closed, but buy my gin. Like, that's insane.
Mm-mm.
So we just knew that we needed to support. I don't know how we came up with it, but yeah, I think it was just a group of us just spitballing, trying to work out ways to support us. And then on the other end, there was a lot of people in the industry who had come from overseas to work, but they weren't Australian citizens, and they had no way of feeding themselves. So we had Jason Chan in Melbourne who opened his bar up, and he had a kitchen, and I think he gave out 150,000 meals in that time over COVID.
Oh, wow.
And we would do fundraising for that as well and give them money, and various other groups money that were feeding people. So there was all these. It was we were in crisis at the time.
Yeah.
But we were trying to make it like I know we're in crisis, but look at these funny things that we can also do. So, yeah. And they were just so bad. Like the videos Seb and I did a video, and it was appalling.
I'm going to look it up. Yeah. Hey, sorry to interrupt the conversation, but this is actually where part 1 ends. Part 2's ready to play though. So when you're ready, head over there, click the play button, and enjoy the rest of this remarkable conversation.